This talk is about GESIS Search, our service to search and find research data and related information. I am a computer scientist by education, and in my service part, I'm the technical lead of GESIS Search, so I'm leading the activities to improve and develop GESIS Search. In my research, I'm very much interested in interactive information retrieval. And that is a research field in which we look at humans and information systems interacting with each other. And we want to improve this overall information interaction with new services, components, and models. Let me give you a short introduction and overview of the talk. So this talk is structured around design choices we did in GESIS Search in the past. And I will go through the different design choices and will argue a bit based on the evidence we caught from user studies with social scientists. So we will look at choices such as one search for everything at different categories, how we support the relevance decision, how we support the download of data and materials, and what about links between different information types. And I will also give a short outlook to new design choices which are ahead in the future. So these design choices are based on the so-called user-centered design approach. And this is an iterative process one can use to build products and services based on user needs. And for that, first, you want to understand the context of use and what user needs. So you can use different methods, such as observational studies, you can do interviews or diary studies, and so on. And second, based on that, one can specify requirements for the product. Third, one can implement them into prototypes or mock-ups, and then can evaluate again with users. So finally, you have models which can be integrated into the productive system. And this overall procedure helps developing products which are actually driven by user needs, and in our case, by social scientists. Before we go to the design choices, I want to give you an overview of the broadness and topics of the social sciences. So when we talk about social sciences, this is pretty much a broad field. So there are official definitions, for example, from the Universal Decimal Classification or from the United Nations. A simple definition would be that in the social sciences, we look at humans interacting with each other in the society. So I today brought to you a visualization we did in a research paper passed in 2017. And this shows broad categories on the most upper levels of a categorization system. So on the left graphic, for example, you see bubbles around sociology, political science, and so on. But also on related fields, on domains such as psychology. So this is an interactive graphic in the browser, and you can click on the circles or bubbles from broad categories down to user search queries. So in the left side, you see, for this example, I clicked on applied fields of the social sciences, and on the right fields, on the secondary level, I click on social problems. And then you see again two new graphics, and on the next level, in the left graphic, we can see different topics within this field of social problems, such as poverty, violence, disability, for example. Then I choose to click on refugee, and then in the right graphic we can see all search queries users have entered into the search bar to find appropriate social science publications. So for example, users here have searched for refugee in combination with escape, asylum, integration, traumata, or migration. So the point I want to make here is that the social sciences are a broad field with different categories, subcategories, and topics on the one side, but also have a diversity of user topics and search queries from users on the other side. So let's get back to the design choices and start with the first design choice, the goal of one search for everything. So if you are a researcher or interested person looking for social science information, you have several choices. So you could use a web search engine or digital library or data repository to find information. For example, I did a search for migration in a popular search engine and got returned these results. So here we can see in the hit list that the animation movie called Migration takes a prominent place, and also in the knowledge graph on the right side. So now you're saying, okay, but you have to define an information type to find certain informations. So I could add that to the search query. So, for example, I could specify that by adding data to the search query, so we have migration data, which now shows a number of specialized data portals. And what one needs to do right now is to go to these portals and submit another search query for your individual information need. So there are also dedicated digital libraries where you can search. For example, I choose the Broadcast CSA portal, which also gives you results for publication on migration. So in this example, we have 44 result items, and the first item is about the great migration and changing seasons in the Serengeti. So not too many results in that case. A third category would be dedicated data repositories to look for data. For example, I choose DataSite, in which you can also look for data on migration. And DataSite is a portal which gives persistent identifiers to research data. So here we have more results, about 250,000 different works, and the first item is about parameter sensitivity in the prediction, and so on and so forth. Okay. So overall, what can we learn? So the social sciences are a broad field, but it's also difficult to find information specifically you want. There are a large number of different sources, either for data or publications or other information, and it's not easy to find that information. At the end, you need to be an expert or have knowledge only to identify the sources to identify good information. So by the way, we compared also different data repositories you can find in the link over there, and there we also looked for Google Dataset Search and other portals to find data. So this brought us to our first design choice. We wanted one search and one entry point for social science information GESIS is offering. So we developed a prominent search bar, which you can find in the GESIS web header. Here you can find different information for the topics you're interested in. And for example, here I did the same. I entered migration, and you see the different categories. Information is offered. And another pro tip is that underneath those categories, you get GESIS recommendations, for example, for persons or events or trainings GESIS is offering. And here you can see that there was an event about geodata and spatial regression analysis where migration data played a certain role. The next design choice is about offering different categories of information. You've already seen that in the slide before. For example, for evidence on that, we did a diary study and asked 12 German social scientists to write down their information needs over a period of 2 weeks. And therewith, we collected about 50 individual statements. And in a certain step, we can categorize those information needs. For example, they needed literature or research data or variables from research data or, for example, the support for data analysis. In the next step, in the same study, we conducted an online questionnaire and collected information needs from over 300 participants. So here subjects or participants were scholars on PhD, postdoc, and professor level. And first, they should check a list of given statements, and second, by adding their own information needs. And in this way, we collected over 300 information needs. And these are the results. So we have results in different categories and information. So for example, for literature, people were looking for literature on a specific topic, or for full text, which they can download directly. Or for research data, they are looking for national and international research data. Or for measurements instruments, we're looking for social science items and scales to create their own questionnaires. So this inspired us to introduce categories into the GESIS search. So search results are organized with different categories. For example, research data, variables included, instruments and tools. We have publications, the GESIS library, and GESIS web pages. So if a user searches for topics, here in this example for migration, one can click on these different categories and get an individual search result hit list for research data or publications. So, of course, it's important to know what's inside of these categories. So for research data, we have metadata from our data archive. These are about or more than 6,000 different studies from the 1950s until today. And we also have international metadata from big data providers. We have the category of variables, which lists questions and variables which are contained in the studies from the data archive. We also have instruments and tools. So this is about designing service and data collections. So we list here pre-tested scales and pre-tested questionnaires, and also syntax files to analyze data. In publications, we have a large number of open access publications from the social sciences and also literature linked to research data. And we come back to this point in a moment. We have the GESIS library, which is a real library at our location in Cologne. And here we find publications focusing on empirical social sciences. We also have web pages, and this is important because this web pages list a large number of consulting trainings for social scientists, and so you are able to find them also with GESIS search. So in the next step, after searching and choosing the right category, you have to decide which result items are relevant for your information need. So in this field, to get a little overview, we did an online survey asking about 70 social scientists about their genuine, so their natural information need before entering it into a search engine. So the task here has been, for answering your current research questions, you need quantitative data. You have already searched for the data but did not find a suitable data set. You made a colleague in the cafe corner and know that your colleague has a great overview of the field. So you tell her about your struggle to find that data, and your colleagues offers help and asks you to describe exactly what data or variables you're looking for. Okay, so as you can see, this is a pretty long task descriptions, but we did so to provoke answers which not only consists of one or two keywords, but of longer explanations what are really their information needs. So I brought you today two of the results or example requests we collected in the study. And the first one is, I'm looking for representative surveys of the population that collects the personal attitudes towards democratic principles. So one have to read that twice. It's a bit complex. So here this is about personal attitudes to democratic principles, and it should be representative. The second one is, I'm looking for data and occupational and financial consequences of the corona crisis on older workers. Okay, here in this case, the subject is looking for the consequences of corona for occupation and finances. So you can see, these are pretty complex information needs. If you ask them, they have different topics, different aspects. So people are collecting about statements, opinions, society. So also have vague language inside those requests. So what are older workers? What are democratic principles? And this needs to be further defined. So we support the relevance decision, for example, by showing relevant metadata in the hit list. So we did user studies to find which fields are important to show in the hit list. And we also highlighting the user query terms so that users understand where their search terms has been found. So in this example, you see the yellow background for the example query of migration. So if you click on a result item, we also show detailed metadata about the abstract, the content, the methods which has been used. And again, we will highlight your query terms so that you can follow and see, okay, my query terms has been found, for example, in the content, and you can look that up and see if this data is relevant for you. So the next design choice is the support for data and materials. So for example, in the empirical social sciences, researchers want to understand, let's say, facts, opinions, statements from humans in the society, and they do so by using questionnaires. So what they do is designing a questionnaire with questions and items and scales, and they're sending out these questionnaires, for example, by letter or over the web or via phone. And in some studies, this is done on a larger scale, for example, for whole Europe, and therefore you have a questionnaire in different languages. Yeah, and the society is asked with these questionnaires, and finally the answers or the collected questionnaires are sent back to the researchers. So what results from that process is that there are a lot of different information types, all important for the data collection, the holding, and the reuse. For example, you have metadata on the study, which gives us the title, an abstract, what is the content, so what is the methods which has been used. And you have also raw data files, which essentially collects all the answers. You have the questionnaire, and you also have a code book, which encodes or gives codes to questions, to variables and answer items, and you can see how it is related. You have different other materials, you have the method report, you have standards, for example, for jobs, job descriptions, you have classifications, you have scales, and so on. What also is important, you have primary and secondary literature. This means primary literature tells about how the study has been conducted, and you have secondary literature which uses that data to answer your own research questions. So this means we have a lot of different materials, and in particular researchers are keen on the raw data sets to apply them to their own research data. So what we do in GESIS Search, we provide this little gray box with all the links to materials so that you can download them pretty easily. You have to log in if you download data, don't have to log in if you download questionnaires and other documents, and so you can easily access all these materials. So the next design choice is about the linking of information in the search system. So to understand a bit about this phenomena, my colleagues did an observational study with social scientists at their workplaces. So this was specific to research data, so how researchers are looking for a research data set. And here the task was, in the context of your research, you need research data. For today, you decide to start with the search for research data. So one of the observations from the study is that literature search and data search are connected. So researchers are not really aware how to look for the right data. They do not know exactly the tools, and often they misuse tools, and data is often accessed via publications. But at the end, the link between publications and research data is often explicitly missing, and so people need to search research data by their own, for example, by the title. So that leads me to the last design choice, that we choose to establish links between different information types. So what we have here, that we have a research data set at the top left, and this is about attitudes towards values and religions of Germans with and without migration background. And you can see these little bubbles underneath, one for publications and one for variables. And what you can do is click on one of these bubbles, and this directly leads you to the detailed view and to the sections of related publications, which is then unfold. And then you can inspect publications related to the research data set. There's also a little search box, and you can again search, for example, a subfield, so for religion or what else, and the related publications are filtered down to that subtopic. So what you can do then, you can inspect, you can download the text, you can go to this detailed item, so browse forward and back and so on, and to see if you find related information which is important for you. So the same is, for example, true for variables within a research data set. So we have the research data on the top left and right bottom. We can click again on the variables button, and then we are forwarded to the variables section. And then this lists all 260 variables. And if you're interested in a certain subtopic, you can search again, and this is down filtered. And then you can inspect these different variables for your information need. So one question could be, where does these links come from? So we are using two approaches here. One are manually created links. So in this sense, links come from manual annotations between different information. So, for example, bibliographies, 2 studies are collected within GESIS, and we use these bibliographies to create links between research data and publications. Also, the GESIS data archive is collecting publications to research data, and so does also the GESIS library. So we can deploy those manual linkings and do the browsable links within our search system. We also use an automatic approach. So what we do here is we're taking full text, and then, based on different patterns, we go through the full text and trying to find and extract data citations. So then we can take them out and also use them as a basis to do linkage between different information types. So this is also the background of what is so-called knowledge graph. There will be a talk about that next month. So if you're interested in that, I recommend it to you to visit that. So this is already the conclusion of the first part of this talk. So GESIS search is about searching and finding social science information. We want one entry point, and it focuses on research data and related information, which have links in between them, so you can browse them and then hopefully find your information. For the product, we focus on a user-centered design approach, and this means we build GESIS search and the search system and its components on use cases and needs of social scientists. So one more thing, having a little look into the future, there are also new design choices ahead. So GESIS is doing a strategic expansion towards digital behavioral data. So what does this mean? So in this area, the data collection process is a bit different. Again, we have researchers which want to collect information about facts, opinions, behavior of the society. But here, instead of using questionnaires, In digital behavior data, we are looking at the intermediary data that catches that behavior. So, for example, we use web tracking to see which web pages participants visit over the whole day. Or you can do little surveys on the smartphones. Or you can use social media data with having conversations with posts and reposts. And we could also look at physiological data, which nowadays came from smartwatches, for example. There's also another talk in June, so if you're interested how this data can be collected and what are the challenges to do so for preserving all that data, there's this talk also in this series. So collecting this kind of data has certain implications for the whole data collection and processing and holding approach. So again, we have study metadata, but the raw data might be very different to this usual questionnaires or answers to that. So we may have a vast amount of visited web pages. We may have smartphone data, little questionnaires or whatever. We have social media like posts and reposts and conversations, or we might have sensor data with the user's locations or contacts. So this data might be large, and also this data needs to be processed, for example, to make any sense out of it. For example, for web pages, some categories would be good, like these are web pages the user visited on news, or on leisure time, or on work-related things. So these new information types come with new metadata, which also needs to be represented meaningfully on the user interface, also in GESIS search. And we might introduce new categories, for example, for reusable methods, which operate on this data, which can then later stage be reused and applied by social scientists. So new and bigger data also needs to be understood and downloaded by the users. So this might be also a change for GESIS search. And we want to keep the links between new and old data, between methods for processing, publications which come out of that, and so on. So if you have a question later on and you're not able to do it here, you can write me an email. So this is my email address. There are a number of upcoming talks. So I already talked about knowledge graph and the Twitter thing. There's also a good talk in May about opportunities and challenges of large language models, which might be of interest to you, and a number of other talks. So that's already from my side. Thank you very much for listening and participating